John Wick. John Wick. John Wick. John Wick.
Updated my journal.
Huh? Alrighty, let's see. Ooh! Yo! Shiny! Alright. Everything seems to be in order here. Yeah.
Updating Parapug Model 4.
Okay, that's not really important, but thank you.
Would you like to upgrade your ghost hunting access with a premium membership?
What? You're paywalled now? Ugh, I knew I should have just built another one of you. Wait, what do I get with the premium membership?
Hats.
What, like a real hat?
Affirmative.
Oh. What kind of hat?
Processing image of hat.
Fuck, man. Don't worry about it. It's fine. I don't care.
Canceling hat processing process.
Well, while you do that, I think I'm gonna get back to work on stuff. Hey, actually, tell me something. Do you have the old Parapug's data?
Searching. A file labeled old was archived and is now inaccessible without administrative clearance.
Right. Okay. Well, tell me this. How are you feeling temperature-wise?
Internal temperature is nominal.
Ah, so you're not cold, maybe?
Internal temperature is nominal.
Right. How do you feel about tractors?
Unknown term.
What term?
I do not know the term. Feel?
Oh. Well, that's depressing. How does it make you feel not having that term?
I feel I mean...
Dream spice, not a dream. It's in the writing. It's not flowing through.
What's up, Goth Gamer Nation?
Signalis. Signalis is a top-down third-person cyberpunk survival horror, and I had another Monica Bellucci dream simulator. It was developed by Rose Engine and published by Humble Games and PlaySim for the PC, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch in the year 2022. That's right, a game from this century. They do exist. How do you like that? I always assumed games as a whole died somewhere around 2007. I'm serious. Rose Engine seems to primarily be the output of two German developers. As in the game's credits, they almost comically repeat Yuri, Barbara, and Yuri, and Barbara, and Barbara, and Yuri. Oh shit, Yuri was in this? Well, what about Barbara? Production for Signalis began in 2014 as a 2D side-scrolling game with point-and-click elements that tapped into heady themes of isolation, dreams, surrealism, and having a shared love of dark sci-fi media. They drew inspiration from films like Alien and Blade Runner for the game's setting, though effort was made to blend this well of influence with their own experiences. The first iteration was a result of inexperience and tempered ambition, but over the years a lot would change with the project, as they essentially learned how to develop a game and better render their ideas. Around 2016, it was retooled to an isometric camera position and an impressive combination of both low-poly 3D and pixel art that kind of smushes together into a paste. In 2020, they toyed with the idea of using a Kickstarter to fund the game, but the opportunity to sign with Humble arose and they were able to work on it full-time, which was fortunate as due to the mounting pandemic, they could hardly work a day job at the same time. A turn of events I can empathize with, though I wasn't so much granted the opportunity to pursue my passion so much as I was fired, and I wasn't making a sound business decision so much as I was at the end of my pitiful rope. Once the game was picked up by Humble, it quickly gathered a lot of positive press, including being shown off during the 2021 Tribeca Games Festival, where it was introduced by filmmaker and horrorman Guillermo del Toro, during a Zoom call where he seems to have called in from a sterile examination room of some kind. I hope he's doing okay. That same year, Humble's plan to port the game to several consoles required their engine to be up to date, but they were still working on a version from around 2016, and the process of updating it put years of work in jeopardy at the home stretch. But thankfully, Thankfully, all of those years tinkering away paid off, and they were able to meet the launch date, and at the time of my writing, it's actually not out yet, and this is normally the space I reserve for a brief rundown of how it was received, so I can only speculate that it did well. A smashing success. If not, I guess I'll add an addendum later. Update! I was right! Signalis isn't so much a story that I could confidently recount the plot in bullet points. It's a surreal game that consistently casts doubt on the reality, time, place, or nature of what we're experiencing. While there are moments where it feels like you're being fed a lot of information about its world, it's practically never framed as exposition, lore dumps, but more diegetic information, instruction manuals, bulletins, propaganda posters, emails, and personal diary entries. You can make out much of how it operates, what kind of place it is, but it would probably be fruitless or at least reductive in some manner to piece together some kind of timeline and coherent mythology. This is something that, if done incorrectly, could be frustrating, and for some likely would be either way. I get that. You gotta be patient with it, and there just ain't enough hours in the day to sit there wondering if we're living in a dream within a dream or some metaphysical interdimensional plane beyond the stars. Shit, brother, I'm just trying to shoot some aliens. Space varmints. For me, Signalis avoids this simply by being genuinely interesting. It may not give you every piece of itself, but what is made available feels cohesive. It feels like there is a world out there beyond what you're seeing that is living and breathing as well as rotting and dying. You're just cut off from it, walking through its echoes. With that being said, witness me flail in my attempts to describe what I witnessed with much the same difficulty as trying to quickly synopsize Twin Peaks. A high schooler is murdered, and then a guy investigates her murder, and well, somehow David Bowie becomes a tea kettle. Somewhere in the far reaches of space, in a scout ship meant to search for habitable planets, a lone Replika named Elster wakes from a pod. These ships belonging to the Yusan People's Navy were manned using a partner system of one Gestalt and one Replika. A Gestalt being the in-world name for a flesh and blood human, and Replika meaning a synthetic being produced in various models to aid in a variety of tasks and labor. It seems after some kind of critical failure, however, the ship crashed into a snowy planet, becoming irreparably damaged, and the Gestalt officer is missing, with signs that they may be injured somewhere. Elster heads out into the cold to look for her partner, finding a precarious stairway down into the ground, leading to the first clear indication that this game is going to follow its own dream logic. I was pleasantly surprised when this stairway led to a tunnel you crawl through, only to emerge in first-person perspective and in some kind of radio control room that perhaps functioned as a number station. Also, the hole seems to have sealed behind you. So I was like, oh, okay, this is gonna be weird. Alright, you've got my attention. Cancel my 9 o'clock, I'm gonna be gaming. What was my 9 o'clock? Ah, yes. The inclusion of number stations and the following cutscene also serve as a clear indication and delineation of how the world and atmosphere of Signalis differs from American sci-fi media. There is a framework, some ideas that you might have seen in an American production, but it's colored by the Eurasian experience of its developers, and thus doesn't include a lot of concepts tied to American history and culture. You're unlikely to see a John Halo type chomping a cigar and ready to protect space colonies from aliens, clamoring over an expensive and ineffective wall, though it does concern some kind of spooky totalitarian government engaging in space imperialism, which kinda sounds like something we'll get around to eventually. After a variety of multi-language text appears on the screen, Elster just kinda appears in the ruined bathroom of a building called the Sharpinsky facility, on a planet called Lang, out in the sticks of the solar system. This sprawling facility was in part used to extract minerals and produce munitions to aid in an ongoing war. Reading material concerning the glorious nation of Yusan paints a decent picture of where the world is, or was, or might still be, maybe. It's quite Orwellian, or Kafkaesque, one of those, or both, full of redacted military memos concerning things like banned literature, banned words, labeled obscenity to the state, ration sharing programs, and propaganda hoping to lure young people into getting shot into space on a one-way trip that you're likely not to come home from. This is actually really cleverly integrated into the first area, serving as a subtle tutorial teaching you the game's mechanics. Propaganda posters remind you not to run in the hallways because everyone can hear you. You'll soon learn why that is good advice. Exploring the facility further, we find the deformed and bloodied remains of replicas that don't stay dead for very long. Whatever has corrupted them allows them to limp back to life as fleshy monsters. Part zombie, part robot, all motherfucking One, still clinging to life lets you know that the facility is fucked and that you should leave. Not interested in the particulars of how this came to be, Elster simply shows her the photo of her partner and asks if she's seen her. The more sharp-eyed of you may have noticed that the photo I'm holding up now is of a brunette woman, whereas the one I picked up was of a woman with white hair, and you may be thinking what that's about. And to that I say, don't worry about it. Apparently, all Gestalt officers were sent to the mine below, so if she's alive, that's where she'll be. Getting there will be complicated as it requires a high security clearance key, so we do some more exploring. Coming across a few more signs of life. A Gestalt named Issa has a brief exchange with Elster, where they both just seem to understand that despite the clear danger of this place, they're both looking for someone. A partner. And so even in the face of an unfolding cosmic horror disaster, it's the only thing that matters to them. In the beginning, I was very skeptical of every move this game made. So when I saw this scene, I was like, oh, okay, this is the Kaufman scene. You're continuing to do Silent Hill. Good for you. But really, as much as Signalis will play around in the key of other games, it's not a hollow reference fest. Even if that's the world hacker, game cracker part of my brain, trying to see the code. Blonde, brunette, redhead, movies, film, references. It is its own idea, and one that is honestly ambitious in its own way. Imaginative and moving, and in the wrong hands, it could very easily be clumsy or tone deaf. Ideas like this are so easily fumbled, even with all the resources in the world. It's like, you know how in Detroit Become Human, when the robot's transition to sentience is represented by their RGB light turning from blue to orange? This is like the opposite of that. On a scale of efficacy, this is the opposite. If you're gonna tap into hard sci-fi themes like this, you know, transhumanism, identity, memory wrapped in fatalism, existentialism, real heavy shit, and you fuck that up, it's really funny. Or it's like this game, and it's beautiful and sad. Very, very sad. Which leads me to something I probably should have front-loaded the video with, but I guess I'll take the opportunity now to issue an, I guess, trigger warning for the content of most of the game after this point, because it covers a lot of dark topics and depicts characters who speak very frankly about their feelings of hopelessness and pain. And if you're anything like me, it's easy to empathize with that and take some measure of psychic damage. It's a game where you do a lot of diary reading, a lot of straight privacy invading. So yeah, there is some starkly worded dark stuff that touches on specifically the thoughts of someone cut off from the world, alone and bored, and since a lot of people are not even fully out of pandemic quarantine mindset, well, maybe they are, I wouldn't know. I've been outside like 2 times in the past year. It adds an extra layer of potency. So I don't know how necessary it is, but this is just between you and me. We're just 2 people talking, no big deal. I think it would be wise to be in a good place when you play it, so that if you do take that damage, it doesn't deplete your sanity bar. I need to stop talking about serious things in video game language. I'll patch that out in the next update. Ordinarily, I reserve this space to passive-aggressively allow you an opportunity to avoid spoilers, and because it's usually a game that's like 20 years old, I'm half joking because I know you're not going to bother playing it. Nobody plays video games anymore, and I'm tired of pretending we do. But in this case, I really mean the spoiler warning. In part because this game just came out, so I've hardly even given you the opportunity to not play it. But also, I think if you have any interest in survival horror or dark sci-fi content, you should definitely play it and go into it knowing as little as possible. Obviously, I do want you to watch the video though, so I mean, if you're going to wait and play it first, maybe you could just mute me and leave me playing in another tab. You could also just watch it muted. It probably would be a better video. Actually, you should just go ahead and do that, and I'll wait here. Okay, now that I'm muted, I'll share my spiciest gamer takes. For one, I don't think games should be. You know? Well, I guess we may as well start up your inaugural scan. Go ahead and scan the area for ghosts.
Scanning! Please specify quadrant for scanning. Installation complete. Scan. Getting. Scan.
What's going on? You got a bug or something?
Give me a minute. What day is today?
What day is it? I don't fucking know. That information means nothing to me. Tell you what, while you're working through whatever this episode is, can you just order me some more Mountain Dew Gestalt Orange Citrus? My supplies are running danger. Wait, this is Mountain Dew Game Fuel Charged Orange Storm. That means I'm out. And that means I'm gonna go fucking crazy. Capiche?
Ordering.
Okie dokie. Found documents hint that whatever happened here didn't happen in an instant. There were weeks of mounting illness that strangely affected Gestalt and Replika alike, both exhibiting the same symptoms, which starts as a flu and advances to internal hemorrhaging and cognitive decline. After death, a cancerous growth that develops in their bodies seems to reanimate them, where they lash out in some kind of base defensive instinct. Also, life in this place before the plague must have already been pretty miserable, operating more like a detention center than anything else. People disappearing in the mine beneath or being arrested for the slightest infraction trumped up to suspicion of conspiracy. You'll come across more replicas who are still coherent enough to talk to you, some still perfectly adhering to their programming, and others just aren't holding up so well, displaying fear and depression like any Gestalt would in this scenario. Like most parts of me, I hate this part of my brain that is working tirelessly to saw through the walls of a hedge maze, trying to get to the end of a sentence before it's been spoken. But because I couldn't stop it, I spent a lot of time in Signalis trying to have a definitive explanation for everything, and appropriately, that's probably not gonna happen. The first few Silent Hill games are cited as an influence, and I do think they work similarly, and not just in their shared love of giant holes to casually hop into, but in that they follow a dream logic where events can happen that you don't quite understand the timeline or significance of. Characters could behave oddly with our protagonist not saying much more in response than, what is going on? This is weird. The difference may be that Signalis is also trying to build a universe at the same time. So while Silent Hill does have lore, it's malleable, rarely the focus, and outside of the town, you'd imagine it's just regular old USA. Signalis has to explain a lot of things about itself, its world, its hard sci-fi ideas, without a spoon, and while I don't think it's perfect, I think it's really successful at this, where one moment you have this technical document that is explaining something in plain, instructional language, hard science, and then Elster will watch a videotape of a train car, and then be in the train car, and then pick up something from the train car and return with it without comment, and I don't know how the fuck that fits into anything. After a great deal of keycard hunting and puzzle work, Elster drops further down into the facility and is attacked by a corrupted minor class replica, though after defeating them she just appears elsewhere, confronted by an administrative replica named Adler. Replica or not, you can just tell he's a corporate dickhead by the way he walks with his hands behind his back. There are no voiced characters, but you know this guy sounds like fucking Pegasus.
Thank you, Kaiba boy.
Elster asks about her Gestalt, which Adler recognizes as Alina Sio, before pushing her down an elevator shaft. In a vision or memory or dream, Issa, the Gestalt we ran into earlier, wakes up in an empty classroom, having expected to meet up with Erica, the person she was looking for. Looking in the library, she finds a girl with white hair being shoved and kicked around by a bunch of students wearing masks. Presumably not Erica, unless there are two characters with an equally unique look to them. Elster wakes up at the bottom of the elevator shaft and in a pile of similar looking dead replicas, which she does not comment on. The elevator is out of order. Well, yeah, I'd say that's at least the third most noteworthy thing about it, sure. I mean, I guess it's understandable. Some things in life you just gotta completely ignore for the sake of your own well-being. Like, just horrifying realizations, health issues, jury duty summons. Elster seems to enter the memory of Issa once more, though with less preamble. It just kind of cuts to Issa holding a knife and backing away from a slowly approaching Adler. In the sort of staff accommodation floor of the facility, we find a dead Falk unit, the commander of the facility, who, unlike the others, just sealed herself away to die alone. This is one of the first clear implications of the fun, cerebral sci-fi idea that Signalis plays with. That is so much my shit that I was just almost annoyed. Like, oh, well, now I'm gonna like this game, whether or not I think it's good. You've swindled me. In this Falk unit's diary, she writes that she's dying and doesn't want to fight it anymore. The red eye beyond the gate poisoned her, and she says her mind has become contaminated with the memories of another. Still able to produce her own thoughts, she feels stuck between the mind of another person, with memories of a silver-haired woman that she longs to see, cursed with this longing. This can partially be explained by classified documents outlining how a Falk unit functions. You can find a breakdown of each of the replica units and specifically how to keep their persona stable destabilized. I'm like 60 to 70% sure my read of this is correct, but the implication seems to be that replicas are made with the carbon copy of a Gestalt neural pattern, with that human person's memories suppressed in some fashion. In this way, they can carry out their tasks employing the skill and understanding of that person without their sense of identity. Each replica is likely a copy of a Gestalt that was already adept at the thing the replica is meant to replicate. But a complication to this process is that each unit type requires specific conditioning to avoid their Gestalt memories from surfacing. There are triggers they must avoid, and distractions to be mindful of, lest it awakens something that would destabilize their persona. If you throw off that balance, the replica begins to feel like there is an invader in their brain. For many of them, keeping a diary helps them remain in the present. For some, the possession of items referred to as a fetish can help in the same way. The example they use is a stuffed animal, just some totem or constant that pacifies them. The star units are like the guard class, cops essentially, and they are given military weapons as fetish items, which is not unlike real cops. Something I'm not confident about my understanding of is the process by which replicas are made, and I don't know what it is that allows it, a force, a power, or a resource of some kind. Bioresonance. Certain units have greater degrees of bioresonance and can perform feats that other units can't, working together in a shared song that amplifies their abilities. Abilities like communicating at frequencies that Gestalts and other replicas can't perceive, or manipulating objects with their thoughts, comparable to literal mind reading and telekinesis. A unit called a Colibri that hid confidential documents in an illusion kept a note suggesting they keep an eye on Adler. She read his mind and saw a memory involving an Elster unit, and there is no record of an Elster unit ever being deployed at Sierpinski. They had considered it, but then the commander got sick and that plan was cancelled. Adler's diary reveals that he was well aware of his Gestalt memories and had found some kind of uneasy alliance with them, but would often recall a mashup of his own and theirs. In his dreams, he also saw visions of a silver-haired woman, and in them he was performing some kind of test on her with a deck of cards. Also in Adler's room is a file on Elster units, which explains that they are meant to be scouts and survivalists, loners, rebels. Little joke there. Their original neural pattern, however, was lost in the destruction of an archive holding it, so newer Elsters are made as a copy of a decommissioned unit. Learning more and more about the quirks and flaws of the replicas, this fragile, tampered identity they've been stuck with, for those with empathy, is honestly kind of heartbreaking to examine. I don't know about you, but it's easy for me to empathize with robots, like laughably easy. The bar is so low you could put googly eyes on a Roomba and I'd probably tear up if it rolled down a flight of stairs. So you can imagine how I felt when you find a Colibri that's been disconnected from its fellow units because they've become monsters. More so than frightened about the state of the facility, she just feels alone because they've shut her out of their song. With the fall of Sierpinski, the delicate facade has crumbled and the living replicas are just confused and lost, trying to hold on to what they can remember with their brains not designed to remember many things. It shows they are also capable of developing strong emotional connections with each other as well. You can find an injured star unit consoling a sobbing Yule unit, and their language is more familiar and heartfelt than you'd expect. So if granting a fake human characteristics is similarly a point of vulnerability for you, you are going to die. Another diary from Adler hidden away in a safe is found. In it, we can see his persona degradation becoming an issue for his daily life. He begins feeling a constant deja vu and finding diary entries dated the same day that he doesn't recall writing. Seeing as though seeking help for this would just lead him to being decommissioned, he suffers in silence, while his days become muddled and his Gestalt memories bleed into waking life. In the end, he, like Elster, is drawn towards the mine. Thankfully, this safe also includes Adler's administrator keycard, meaning we can finally head down towards that very mine. Meanwhile, Issa, now covered in injuries, hides from Adler, who repeats a similar sentiment to what he told Elster: "You shouldn't be here." This time, however, Issa stabs him and he falls into a hole. There's been very little information about Elster's Gestalt, but down here we do find a note that implies she was looking for her, but it was as if she had never even been there. This was written around when the virus or whatever it is seemed to peak and the reanimated monsters were beginning to become an issue. Though other documents deeper within suggest a great deal of time has passed, it appears the illness that infected the others has gotten to her, and she rapidly feels its effects. Her hair began to turn white, and her memories became confused with those of another. Jumping into a fleshy hole this time, Elster shows up in time to save Issa from being attacked by an amalgamation of the monsters. Locked in a cage of some kind, they combined into a replica Rat King. This is, unfortunately, the full extent of the game's rat representation, but it is to be expected from the systemically human supremacist game industry. I get it. Okay. Once the creature is defeated, however, Issa has fallen unconscious, so Elster carries her to a save room. They catch up briefly before parting ways once more. In a mirroring of the game's opening, we come to another precarious spiral staircase, this time decorated in flesh. At the top, Adler sits pensively against a bright red landscape, ruminating about nothing changing. He says the commander walked out into that same landscape, and when she returned, she was different, and then became sick. At first, I figured this meat wall complex leading to a red landscape was a clear indication that we have crossed into a nightmare, or transitioned to another world of some kind. Maybe passage into replica death, but it could just be the most outwardly cosmic horror element of it. Following a flurry of voices and memories that implore her not to be afraid, past a number of other dead Elster units, we find what appears to be the ship we initially crash-landed in, seeing images of herself and Alina and Ariane, which I'm just now remembering they fucked my brain with, so I will get back to that. Elster attempts to pry open the doors to the ship, but her arm is ripped off in the attempt and she appears to die from this damage, joining the trail of others who were attempting the same thing. So this is where it kind of ends, but I'd also like to make clear that it does seem like there are variables that would result in other endings. I'm guessing because, well, firstly they named the ending I got, but also I DM'd one of the devs asking about it and they gave me a half answer that I didn't press, so I don't know what those would be, and this is entirely reflective of my own experience with the game, and I'm sure days from now there will be some comprehensive breakdown that does its best to wring the mystery out of it. Signalis explained, if you will. That is not for me to do. I like thinking about the meaning of a piece of media, of art, and ruminating on how it affected me, but I'm more than willing to just let something remain unanswered, or to let that answer be that there is no answer. Like the contents of all these phone calls I keep getting lately. I don't need to know. Hello? I don't want to know! Jeepers creepers. Obviously, once the credits were rolling, I was skeptical that Signalis would conclude so abruptly. Wasn't angry about it, but I was more so in the, guess I'll have to think about this a little more than I was planning stage of grief. Thankfully, you can just keep playing it after it returns to the main menu. Once again, Elster wakes up aboard the scout ship, only it's different now. Walking into the cockpit, you can see that you're in space. This thing is moving. You do find notes, but instead of blood-spattered epitaphs, it's just a sweet slice of life diary about Elster and Ariane watching war movies together. So, since everything is intact and operational, this must be some kind of flashback, but the fact that Elster has a different Gestalt seems to suggest that this is not the same Elster. After all, Elster is a model name that just kind of doubles as a nickname, so this is likely another Elster on one of many similar scouting missions. But then I remembered that when we first picked up the photo from the crashed cockpit, it was very clearly white-haired Ariane. But then when we got to Sierpinski, the photo changed to Alina. When you hand it to Adler, he says, ah yes, Alina. So it's not out of the question that we've been hopping between different Elsters and didn't notice, because they all look a bit similar. Not saying this to express my internalized Replika racism, just suggesting that their creator had a type. You can get a look at some other reading materials not present in the crashed scout ship, like a survival type guide for Gestalts, that says if you're starving to death out in space, which is highly likely, you may think to eat your replica buddy, but it would mostly just make you sick and worsen your suffering. So you should probably just instruct it to, just get a knife and make you a fancy dinner. You can also find an unopened breakdown of Elster units that they give you the option to open or not, which in retrospect was likely one of those variables I was wondering about. You know what? I'll go play it again right now and report back to you if this changes anything. Update. It didn't. I played it all the way through again. Great! If you open it up, you learn that Elster units were made to be stoic loners that thrive on their own. So in order to maintain their persona stability, it's best to just leave them alone to their tasks. They then break down all the triggers that should be avoided so that its Gestalt memories do not surface, including giving them photographs, do not show them war movies, do not let it listen to music, and most importantly, do not try to befriend the Elster unit. Well, it's a good thing we didn't. Well, it's a good thing we didn't. Oh, this is not good! But they're so cute together. But they'll die. But it'll be cute. If the implication here isn't sad enough, I started thinking, well, headcanoning, if we're being honest, about the fact that the envelope was unopened so long into their mission. Like, even if it has no effect on gameplay, it makes a point of asking you to open it, which it doesn't do for any other classified document. What I can only take away from this is that Ariane perhaps naively wasn't interested in reading the instruction manual for what became her friend, and obviously more than friend, which is sad for so many small reasons that are completely unspoken. It's kind of fucking brilliant how many barbs the dagger you've stuck in me has. It's like every time I shift around, I feel a new one. Oh, that one got my spleen. Let's go. This sweet moment is interrupted as the last Elster we were playing as wakes up in the snow sometime after she collapsed, which is definitely different because it's red, whereas the one we tried to bust into was white, right? It's two different. Ariane's ship was... The diary entries this time are almost stomach-turningly grim in comparison to the last ones we found. Written by an Ariane that is falling apart physically and psychologically an unknown number of days into their mission. Or cycles, rather. In the cryopod room, we find a dead Elster slumped over next to what looks like some pulsating mass of flesh, presumably what is left of the two we saw in the flashback. The dead Elster is scavenged to replace the bits damaged when we Motoko'd ourselves earlier, which is equally triumphant and depressing. Again, tapping into the use of a human-like thing to drag human emotion out of me. There was this creeping retroactive empathy that developed when I saw these two behaving in such a loving, familiar way. And even in the note from Ariane where she says that Elster laughed at her for running out of a specific paint color, like, I knew they were probably capable of that, but there was something that made it real reading it. Oh man, they can laugh and fall in love? This is fucked up. You can't just tell me this pencil's name is Steve
and go like this.
So just when I think I've got a good read of what's going on, Elster jumps into another hole at the bottom of the ship and appears at a recurring shoreline scattered with the pages of some kind of poem that summons familiar imagery that you've read in other people's notes. Lots about flesh, a voice calling, and something ancient that should have remained undisturbed. It's around here that a lot of the threads of things I've been picking up on and half remembering, me, the player, begin to coalesce, and the goblin man that lives in my brain summons all his energy to make one strained turn of the donkey wheel that powers me. Images returning to me, slotting into place and sloppily forming the blurry image of this plot. Some people just got the mind for it. What can I say? Some people just get games. It's the same power that lets me find Gex funny.
I look, it's my ex-wife.
I see you, Gex. Remember when you were allowed to be funny? Again, we appear in another bathroom, only now it's gotten more veins. In another aside, we see Adler standing with Falk, telling her that she's changed. He's also got a very fucked up face now. A new place called Rotfront is made available, and that means there are a lot more puzzles and obstacles and creatures and neat things to read. Like a bulletin about a holiday being cancelled as authorities investigate rumors of an Imperial spy. A magazine article explains some of the ominous language in the game concerning the Red Eye, as merely a storm that occurs regularly on this planet, waving it away as Pareidolia. The people of Rotfront have nevertheless made it a symbol of the oppressive surveillance state they dwell in. It is interesting to, so late in the game, receive a lot of details about all this peripheral stuff, the war, the trade blockades, and so forth. But more importantly, the significance of bioresonance technology. It's what allowed the Yusan nation to create replicas and terraform planets. Without its discovery nearly a century ago, they would have been easily steamrolled by their enemies. This also to some degree explains the game's 80s adjacent retro-futuristic look. Once they got a hold of bioresonance, most other traditional technology development stagnated. It quickly led to these wildly advanced gadgets, but we still got magnetic keycards, cassette tapes, and vinyl records. The author of this journal also remarks that we've perhaps become too reliant on something that we still, after all this time, barely understand and can't recreate recreate with regular old computers and circuits. Seeing as this is where Ariane lived and was sent to school, we pick up on some mentions of her, mostly how it was annoying that she still pursued pointless distractions like painting and music. At one point you find a disc with medical records, and one of Ariane's friends appears in this, named Isolde, which I'm guessing is the full name of Issa. This also makes the connection that Erica, the person she was looking for, was her sister. It also makes a note that she's apparently prone to accidents, being regularly treated for small lesions. Ariane shows up in here as well, and while it does make mention of her hair color change, the rest of her information has been removed. Erica and Issa both worked at their family's bookstore, which was known to hold a lot of banned reading materials. Some of these you can peek at, and they describe a more mystical interpretation of bioresonance, referring to it as a song or vibration that exists in all of us, and it was granted to us by a being named the Grand Empress. It was her power that allowed machine servants to live. In the back room of the shop, we find a now greatly wounded Issa, who laments that she couldn't find Erica, and as if that was the only thing keeping her on her feet, she collapses to the ground into a fleshy mass, in a scene reminiscent of Lisa's transformation in Silent Hill. Breaking into a photo store Ariane worked at, we find an undamaged copy of the photo we had been carrying around of Alina. My guess for this, which is all I have, if you'll indulge me, and you have to, you're stuck, I've locked your browser, get fucked idiot, is that the woman standing next to Alina is possibly the original Gestalt whose neural pattern was used to create Elsters, before they started using a copy of a copy. There is a lot of obfuscation around the photo because they swap it out when you're not looking, and it has other significance in the plot, like at one point Ariane, while working at this photo store, sent the photo of Alina to her mother because she thought it was weird how similar they looked, and ultimately this would be the thing that pushed her to join the Penrose program, which led to her being shipped off into space, because she saw an image of this proud woman in uniform and wanted to have her own photo just like it. But while looking back at the footage of my playthrough, I noticed that before our second, maybe, Elster rips her arm off, she appears to be shot by someone. Like, she takes a hit somehow and it rattles her. And I don't know where that came from, or if that is like a brink of death hallucination thing, but in that moment a bunch of images flash by, and one of them is of the photo of Alina, but like the actual time and place it was taken, as well as a trench full of dead bodies, and the original Gestalt was a veteran, which is why you're not supposed to show them more movies. She's got her eye bandaged up in the photo, but there's also a frame of her actively covering an eye wound. So like one way or another, our Elster is seeing the memories of this person in vague flashes. Does that mean that Alina lived to see her war buddy become copied into an Elster and then served with that Elster? Or that could just be the decommissioned Elster that got copied, and maybe she was decommissioned because she lost her eye. But it lists everyone here and doesn't mention Elster. I mean, the only recognizable name on here is Lilith, which could be Issa and Erica's mother, I'm guessing. I don't know what that means. I don't know. Oop. Uh-oh. Looking back, some moments become clearer, and you can better divide the timeline of two different Elsters going through similar journeys. We've been kind of drifting between Elsters, two ships and two different Gestalts, as our own minds are likely joining the song of the others, living out the same cycle of memory as a result of our design. Each of us thinking ourselves the protagonist of the story, with a partner to save and a promise to keep. Though I think the game is just choosing to focus on two of them, and the amount of dead Elsters we've walked past seem to suggest that there have been an untold number of Elsters whose memories have been confused with the original, decommissioned Elster, and have followed the same doomed path, repeating many of the same mistakes. This particular Elster may be making it the furthest as a result of the failure of the ones before it. Like, you only survived that fall in the elevator shaft because there was a pile of dead Elsters to break your fall. A locker hides a note from someone implying that they were the Imperial spy, and they're bailing because the white-haired girl at the photo shop is bioresonant, which does definitively imply that Ariane had some natural connection to the energy that created replicas, perhaps explaining why her hair went white early and she was compelled to paint images of this alien island that we see in our dreams or visions or memories. I say explaining like that was anything other than a guess. In the final area of the game, we get a hallway of notes from Adler and Falk. Adler says he doesn't think the illness that killed the Gestalt and turned the replicas to masses of flesh was just a virus. but the corruption of reality, and that our repeated efforts to fulfill our promise is destroying reality itself. A diary entry from Falk, the first to fall sick from this corruption, reveals that she's been dreaming of Elster's journey, from a crashed ship through a strange gate, down a hole, an island beyond reach, and memories of another life. She too became confused as the two lives blurred together, even remembering the moment that Elster and Ariane danced together, feeling the loss and longing for that moment as though it was her. The hallway leads back to Falk's resting place, only now she rises and chastises you for returning, says that she will never dance with us again, doesn't even want us anymore, that they are incomplete and must become whole. I suppose there must be different reads on what exactly is happening here, because Falk does seem corrupted, but her function as a Falk unit was to manipulate the minds of others, and this fight does play with reality, teleporting you to different locations and obscuring the player's vision by seemingly glitching the game itself. After she's defeated, she seems to solemnly rejoice that they are finally won. We are then shown a juxtaposition of Elster and Ariane in a similar configuration, which betrays the sort of Lovecraftian overtones and could imply that Falk is merely relieved that she'll be with Ariane in death. The red eye is in full effect outside, and a severely fucked up Adler waits to give you one final warning about going through with this. Though when she attempts to pass him, they both make a move to attack each other at once, resulting in Elster getting a knife through the eye and Adler getting a bullet in the gut. This doesn't seem to slow her down, and she trudges forward as Adler bleeds out. This time, she's able to successfully pry open the door to the ship. Inside Ariane's ship, we find a lot to read from her, learning how ultimately her choice to leave Rotfront was that she didn't feel as though she fit in, and wanted to be alone. And I guess the far reaches of space are, aside from being the only place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism, the best place to be alone. While we've numerous times seen the initial update from home that congratulates you on your glorious contribution to your nation, we've not seen the follow-up they sent out 3,000 cycles later. One that in similar language makes it clear that if you haven't found a suitable place to land and set up shop by now, the best thing to do is to make peace with the fact that you never will. So rather than prolonging the inevitable, you should maybe begin working out how you want to close up shop, so to speak. Several other diary entries recount Ariane's state of mind as she goes from optimistic, just glad to be away from home, to bored, to making peace with that boredom and befriending Elster, to becoming more and more stir-crazy, and eventually her health begins to decline. These devolve into more simple, bleak statements about not wanting to live, but not wanting to die. In their old room, our Elster finds a dead Elster that is the first one she seems to acknowledge, maybe suggesting that this is the original owner of our memories. It could be, I don't know why I keep guessing that. I don't actually know. Like, in order for that to make sense, Ariane's mission would have had to have been she, like, unknowingly circled around the galaxy and then crash landed back at Rotfront, and then they, like, collected Elster and were like, alright, well, I guess we'll just make more of this one. But she also says that she couldn't keep our promise, understanding that she was someone who got sick and died, but is also now fully in sync with those old memories, using I statements about it, you know, I got sick and I died, which makes it sound like doublespeak to imply that I'm dead right now and this is an afterlife of some kind. But there's like a sci-fi explanation why it also couldn't be that. Oh, it's so fun. It's so fun that I don't know. In the cryo chamber, we find Ariane, still alive, barely lucid in a bath of some kind of fluid. Elster tells her that she came back for her, but tragically, for whatever reason, Ariane doesn't remember you, which could mean a whole host of different things, but this revelation doesn't change Elster's relief, and she asks if she can stay with her, collapsing by her side. Ariane then appears to kindly put a hand on her as they presumably die together. Again, I'm sure there are other endings, but this is the one I got. It could very well be that after the fight with Falk, everything forward was a memory. We just slyly switched places again and played out the fate of the Elster whose armor we took, as it does just circle us back around to that. It's also not out of the question that all of this has been some mishmash of memories spun into a cycle, a carousel of shared fantasies we simply can't escape from. Our inability to get off the ride led to the completion of reality's undoing. If you couldn't tell, I get some enjoyment out of inspecting all the puzzle pieces and fussing with how they fit together, but I'm relieved that they don't always fit snugly, and many pieces are missing. Well, not missing, they exist somewhere. Someone has them. They exist. I paid for a full puzzle. Like most adversity I greet in life, I try to make sense of it using video game reference points. So I have plenty of half thought out theories, game theorizations, if you will. Obviously, Silent Hill is a big source of inspiration, and of course it is. It's a game so good, when it came time to catch up with Capcom's remakes, they leapt right over it. It's untouchable. It's like the Bible. That's what I tell myself. It's like Bible. So I've been tinkering with the idea of Ariane as an Alessa-like figure, someone who led a kind of miserable life that was cut short, enduring abuse and mistreatment at the hands of those who should have been looking after her, and those who feared her as well. Alessa was indoctrinated into her mother's Lovecraftian doomsday cult, and Ariane was indoctrinated by her country, the military, another kind of doomsday cult. She had some manner of ability or connection with a cosmic power that she didn't rightly understand herself, which might have ties to some ancient abandoned mythology. In Silent Hill, this is mysticism, witchcraft. In Signalis, it is bioresonance. Both were unwilling to conform to either a deeply religious small town or a totalitarian state. Both make one meaningful connection with someone similarly forced into a life they don't want. Another misfit. For Alessa, it's Claudia Wolf. For Ariane, it's Elster. Tragically, both are used for some greater purpose. A sacrifice enacted by a mother and an oppressive government, leading to a slow, cruel death. Some kind of deity is suggested in the Red Eye, but you could also swap out God for government as the beneficiary of the sacrifice. This suffering, whether she is cognizant of it or not, seems to have been inflicted on everyone she ever crossed paths with. I mean, what more fitting vengeance could there be than quite literally making someone experience what you experienced, giving them your painful memories and convincing them that they are their own? Most of Sierpinski's population, with few exceptions, seems to have been made to experience the loss of the only person they ever connected with, the maddening loneliness and rotting away, just as Silent Hill was twisted by the nightmares Alessa endured. Again, I don't explore this because I think it's derivative or anything. I'm literally just excited that something is making me feel the way a Silent Hill game makes me feel, and I had long lost any hope of feeling that. Like, it was dead. And it is now back to being dead because I don't expect another one of these. But this was a wonderful revival. For a moment, that corpse shot up out of the ground, and I screamed and burst into tears for several hours. And all at once, it had receded into the night. But I felt better about it. I felt some resolution, like maybe I can finally move on. And if I continue this theory just for funsies, my thinking on how Issa factors into all this was that she, like Lisa, and just in saying this out loud I'm realizing is one letter off from Lisa, was an innocent that was unfortunately caught in Ariane's blind wave of wrath. I think the fact that her medical records describe her as being a klutz might be a red herring, and the reason we find her with a missing eye and numerous other injuries is that she's been repeating Elster's follies as well, foreshadowing what would happen to our own eye. But being a Gestalt, she didn't last as long. Even making this connection feels so minuscule. If you zoom out and take into account all of its other influences, there's a lot of other media worked into that I have a hard time unraveling because it's clearly not video game related, and that is literally all I know. What the significance could be of the King in Yellow appearing at different locations, the repeated appearance of the painting Isle of the Dead, an image of a disquieting island and ferryman approaching it that was famously remade several times over, but similarly are not attributed with any explanation or meaning. I guess it wouldn't be out of the question that repurposing them as Ariane's painting could just be a neat way to play into the theme of a cursed cycle. Perhaps others were even driven to paint it themselves in a repeat of the memory of its initial painting. I don't care if that's a valid idea at all, but just the fact that I had it, you know? It's the friends we made along the way. I could be wrong about all of it, but it captured my imagination, overclocked it, made me think, and that is really special. I probably need to play a brain-off dumb game now to make up for it, but it's great. Taking this ending as my singular, complete experience, it's not an easy playthrough. It's a really intriguing trail of breadcrumbs that someone kind of stomped and kicked around to throw you off, and ultimately, when I got to the end, I had to confront my expectations. What did I really think was going to happen? At a certain point in the story, you're just bracing for impact, knowing you're going to get punched in the stomach and it's only a matter of when. It's wholly appropriate, bittersweet with a heavy slant towards bitter. I've been thinking about it for like a week now. It has lingered with me, like my brain is still desperately trying to find the light inside of it, which I think is testament to its power. I'll probably wind up playing it again, just on a harder difficulty to see if I get anything else. Update! I did not.
Just remember, we're all alone all of the time. Unless you're religious and you're just not the type. Too bad for you.
I wouldn't say the story of Signalis is earth-shattering and subversive. It's more so that it's clearly personal and unique. A diary entry in itself, in some regard. A thoughtful reflection of interests and experiences, complementing a game that isn't content just being a love letter to classics. That's just what it uses to get in close. It played on my nostalgia to corner me, and then when I thought that's all it would be, it pulls a rug out from under me, whereupon I land on a subsequent rug that gets pulled, and then I died. I have a big appreciation for the concepts that this game plays with, the surreal, dreamlike, playing with memory and time, and causality loops in a way. And it's extra helpful that I'm also like a complete idiot. Letting me play Signalis is like giving a ferret a Rubik's Cube. I'm not smart enough to fully understand how it works, but also, I can bat it around like a ball and goad it into chasing me, maybe. Wait, whoa, where you going? Where you going? Come on. Can I share a dirty secret with you? Who's listening right now? Get them out of the room. This is not for their ears. This knowledge they ought not be privy to. The truth is, I'm a bit of an old head gamer, okay? I like old games because I'm fucking twisted. I like the first handful of Silent Hills and Resident Evils. Give me 1 to 3. Give me the 2 little black sheep. Yeah, fuck it. Throw Gaiden in there. And let's get Remake and 0 as well. And I think that's it. Weird. Feels like I'm missing one. I went 1, 2, 3. Oh, I'm such an idiot. Code Veronica X, then Silent Hill 1 through 4. And that's fucking it, bro! So obviously it's not too often that I get to play something new that taps into that craving. There are plenty of indie titles that I think are well-intentioned efforts to recapture this, but often wind up making it an aesthetic choice first, and then they either begin with or slowly acquiesce to feedback, asking for more modern elements until it comes out the other end with an identity crisis. A new game that looks vaguely like an older game. This strange, uncanny place in the middle where I guess it reminds me of a specific old game I played one time or another, but I can tell when you're lying to me. I know a replicant when I see one. Signalis is one of few games I've played in a while. Full stop. But also, that genuinely taps into what it felt like to play a PS1 era survival horror game for the first time. Not to say it's a one-to-one thing, but it hits the same. Activated the same centers of my brain, the part that wants to explore a spooky map, juke monsters in creepy corridors, and burn corpses out of spite for making me waste bullets. It's sort of all at once a recreation, a remix, and an experiment in classic survival horror gameplay. If anything, it fails to accurately recapture those experiences because it's a little too smart. Smart as in it's aware of what parts of those older games caused frustration and what didn't work, and it avoids them near completely. It's like the lack of blemishes within its loop is what makes me give it a second look, like hang on, there's usually something fucked up in one of these. But I see the love for these games shining brightly beneath, attempting to find a balance between the intentionally oppressive systems of these older titles and modern conveniences that are hard to let go of. From speaking with the devs, the main capitulation they made to demo feedback was allowing Elster to have some movement while aiming a weapon, which even then is a slow creep, and there is still a learning curve to the timing of combat. It took me a while to develop the patience and understanding that this isn't a Twitch shooter. You don't just immediately lock onto enemies. There is a lag where Elster lifts a gun and aims it, but you can still fire it while you're traveling to that position, likely wasting a round or two.
No, aim at the big one. Oh, got him.
You'll still be hoarding ammo and defensive weapons as you ferry items back and forth from your limited inventory to your storage box, passing by neat-looking stuff and trying to keep track of where it was so you can come back for it. As you do your best to avoid confrontation with the plentiful mutant replicas that stalk the facility, rarely alone. Moving slowly and out of their line of sight, it's pretty easy to move past them, especially when they're kind enough to stand still, gazing in a mirror, or engaging in some kind of weird muscle memory task. But sometimes they will patrol around or just burst out of the floorboards. Fighting enemies can provide temporary relief from having to creep through a heavy traffic hallway, but unless you have a flare to incinerate their body, they will probably get up sooner than later. Most of the time, I found myself just relenting and shooting an enemy because it managed to swipe me as I was weaving around it, and it was entirely a reflexive act of toxicity. Alright dude, I guess we're doing this, dude. And you know what? I'm crowd killing your boy just because I'm in a blind rage. stage, getting hit is pretty rough, especially on the harder difficulty. You can find yourself in the red after 1 or 2 hits, and unless you've combined healing items to be stronger, they won't do much to mitigate that. I really appreciate the balance here because you're granted some means of defense and one definitive way of defeating enemies for good with flares and eventually a flare gun, but you're never given enough of that resource to just clear out every hallway of enemies and run around without having to be mindful of them. It made me very selective about who I use them on, which enemy is going to be consistently problematic. I really enjoyed most of the puzzles in this game. It is interesting that there is sort of equal representation of 2 schools of puzzle. One being the logical mechanical type puzzle. There's a complicated gizmo with buttons and readouts, and you have to find some balance with either lowering or increasing numbers or bars. Not particularly difficult, but consistent with the world and enjoyable enough. There was one that was like, on the surface, a baby puzzle. Like literally, they give you the solution on a piece of paper next to the machine. But because there were so many steps and it was all worded a little disorienting, I found myself just, with the speed of Frank Truman, just looking back and forth from screen to paper. Okay, B to C and then C to... Oh wait, I gotta start over. There are also some that follow a more surreal logic, like where functionally what you're doing has this application in the world that I can't entirely explain. I couldn't rightly tell you how this is working the way it is, but it's recognizable enough for me to get it relatively quickly. I don't think a single one of them made me feel hopeless or like a genius. I've abstained from looking too deeply into online opinions about the game, but I have noticed others gleefully clapping and pointing at the screen for some of the more obvious allusions to other games. And while I did appreciate that, I think what caught me off guard more was how seamlessly repurposed all these things are. I was running around collecting key cards to put into this hexagonal puzzle door thing, and at a certain point I realized I had done this before in some sense. In another game, I collected a bunch of different colored things to put into one door, and it didn't really matter that I recognized it. It was by then a new thing that had a different purpose. I was moving around various measurements of liquid between tubes. And I had done that before, and beyond puzzles, there is a reference point for nearly every mechanic in Signalis. Stomping on enemies to finish them, burning their bodies, having a disposable taser, you name it. But it's in this way that Signalis feels like an homage to the heights of survival horror games in general. It's finer details and experiments, and not some slavish recreation of one game in particular. It's constructing something beautiful and weird with its best scraps. Some bits, like, yeah, why not just do that again? Sometimes when something is fun, you just want another one of those things, and that's not bad. Unless it's like drugs. Don't do drugs, take care of yourself. The fuck? What is this shit? Pineapple, orange, mango? I'm gonna go fucking crazy! It's okay, actually. Not exactly a puzzle, but there is an element of gameplay that is incorporated into puzzle solving, and I feel a really defining trait of Signalis that is really cleverly integrated, and that is your radio module. Elster gets a radio implant in her head that picks up radio signals, and this is incorporated into both puzzles and combat in certain situations. Some frequencies can tap into number stations that give you passwords for locked safes. There are more than one circumstance where something will be microphone activated, and you'll need to play a signal from your brain to manipulate it, and some enemies will distort your mind, causing the screen to glitch out and obscure your vision. In these situations, you can open up your radio and sweep through it until you get to a piercing tone, which will hurt and kill that type of enemy. It's just a great bit of continuity that something integral to the story like that finds its way into gameplay frequently. It's not just a toy to add flavor, it's a thing you have to use, although it is fun to use it as a toy as well. There were few things that detracted from my playthrough, and even then, they would be mostly nitpicks. I had a lot of trouble targeting things to interact with, like doors or items. It's really particular about where you're standing. This led to some frustration when I was trying to quickly exit an area while being chased, because I'd get to the door and start spamming the button to open it, but Elster is just wriggling back and forth against it. Then even when I'm not panicking, I'm just doing my thing. I'll sometimes have to work to find the angle because I'm not hitting it right. She just won't come to the desk and pick up the item. Don't clip that. Also, I feel like I probably missed out on a lot of flavor text because there are several things you can inspect that aren't highlighted or anything. You just kind of get lucky spamming buttons against things. I don't care if it's just Elster saying, "It's a decorative lamp," or "It's an old lamp," or "Why are there so many lamps, lol?" I want to hear it. Don't shut me out. I'm trying, game, but you gotta meet me halfway. Let's talk about the map. Can we talk about the map? I've been dying to talk about the map all day, okay? Is that okay with you? It's really good. I don't know what it is, man, but filling out a floor plan and having it update automatically with blocked entrances or locked doors, it's the good stuff. Half the time I looked at the dang thing, I think I was just doing it out of compulsion because I think it's neat. Then there's a lengthy segment where they take the map away and talk about taking me out of my comfort zone. What am I going to fidget with now? I guess I'll just wander back and forth endlessly because I have zero navigation abilities. Once a door is closed behind me, it may as well never have existed. This is now the only room that has ever existed. In a very considerate move, all of the documents you find are stored in your inventory, though this doesn't mean that you won't find yourself doodling down some clue to a puzzle or something that doesn't show up there. Or you could just doodle something for yourself. It's good to express yourself, you know? The consideration put into the loop of Signalis is truly a little marvel, never waning or slowing down. It just briskly and confidently chugs along at a decent length as well. I'm not going to start naming names here, but I can be really fickle when it comes to what games I choose to devote my time to playing. There is this really brief window of acceptance where I start up a game, and I've played games that promise similar things, and my brain immediately goes to that line of thinking like, alright, you got about 6 minutes. You got about 6 minutes and 66 seconds. So a little over 7 minutes. And more often than not, I'll say, alright, I get it. I see what you're doing here. This is cute, but I'm a busty gamer. Oh, little typo there. Signalis was completely different. I just lost time in it. It was like 2 a.m. and I realized, uh-oh, I'm really playing this, huh? God damn it. I guess I like it. Fuck. It's so burdensome liking things. Now I gotta be a positive gamer, and I'm still in my dark arc. And you forced me into a redemption arc. But rest assured, I'm still a bad boy. I'm still completely twisted. I'm driven to the edge of sanity from the dark... Fuck, man, I got nothing, man. I have no doubt that many will find their way to Signalis because of the way it looks. It certainly stands out, odd and imposing, jutting out of the survival horror landscape like an alien monolith. And I did come... I lost my place, and that's just a bad place to stop. And I did come to enjoy the unique art style and aesthetic of the game, but it was something that I initially bumped up against. It was just a concern. One I now know is irrational, but look, as much as I have joked about it, like outside of films from the 80s and 90s and a handful of series from the same time, I'm not a big anime head.
Thank you, Kaiba.
What a great character. I love how he rattles Kaiba. Man, I love anime. I'm such a big anime head. You know, if I ever said anything to the contrary, it would be a lie. A goddamn lie, I tell you.
Running in a crowd in a faceless town. I need to feel the touch of...
So a lot of the key art for this game is heavily anime inspired. Even though the demo was enjoyable, I was thinking, well, hang on, it is anime inspired, so it could still turn out to be of some deviant nature in the end. I don't know. But I was really pleasantly surprised that it does seem to draw from anime and manga that I would consider my shit. Aside from the more obvious notes of Ghost in the Shell, it also taps into the bleak atmosphere of Blame, a world full of dystopian megastructures and grotesque, Geiger-esque creatures made of silicone flesh and tangled wires. Contributing to this feeling is the lack of spoken dialogue, and what dialogue is there is really simple and blunt. Nobody really monologues or rants about their plight. It's all just base emotional expression, and I think it uses that really effectively, making the world feel vaguely dreamlike, and leading to a defining visual choice in Signalis, and that's the sort of narration text that flashes across your screen during cutscenes in different languages, like haphazardly spliced in frames in a jumbled up film reel. Aside from just looking neat from a design standpoint, it often dictates the tone of what's happening, like a third party watching your adventure and expressing their feelings about it in this limited and creepy way. A sports commentator communicating through a Ouija board. Just one of many creative flourishes that make Signalis so distinct. Kind of like how nobody has feet and just little nubs like one of those Boston Dynamics dog robots they're always trying to provoke into an uprising. Merely an artistic decision, or a pointed and successful strike against feet perverts. Either way, I approve. A lot of good design all around. It's not reflective of one influence, one era, or culture, and for me this is how cyberpunk should feel. Kinda removed from time and place, multicultural and all at once fantastic but retro-futuristic. Showing a polarization of society and technology where you can have something as out there as a flying car propelled by some magnetic energy engine that we won't live to see, but its interior looks like a '92 Honda Civic. Everything in Signalis has a variation of that quality, and mostly maintains a lot of cohesion. There's a puzzle with a lock-picking machine that displays an X-rayed look at the guts of the lock on a small CRT monitor, which seems like a real thing that could exist in some other timeline, even though YouTube has taught me that locks are at best a placebo. Equal consideration and love is put into the game's UI, with every menu looking like if you took Resident Evil's inventory menu and made it an actual diegetic part of the world, a little wristwatch computer screen with slight video interlacing and tracking issues. Each of your items gets not only a simple icon representing them, but a 3D model we can spin around and inspect, which I appreciate because, must I explain? I think society at large is in agreement. Things are better when you can make them spin. Baby, I'll look at anything as long as you make it spin. There's so much good sound, it's almost jarring, because visually it has this lo-fi look to it. It's harkening back to another time, but the audio is so crisp and clear, and again, there's so much consideration and thought put into it. There's a sense of realism to the sounds that happen outside of you manipulating a sci-fi device, but even those sound familiar in some sense, like PC peripherals that exist somewhere in the recesses of my memory. There is this hum when your inventory is brought up that doesn't need to be there at all, but it adds to the feeling like it's a mass-produced tool and maybe a little out of date even. You can hear mechanical keyboard clacks when changing screens on it. It's really good. In general, it's not hard to impress me with sound, I don't think. It's just not something I often see devs going out of their way to fuss over. I pretty frequently have to do, I guess what you could call Foley work for my videos, which is much less impressive or interesting, but it has really made me appreciate how a sound is chosen. Even if it is from a stock collection and you're not actually putting a mic to something, it's important. I like to think I've gotten pretty good at it. Isn't that right, Parapug? Excuse me while I sip this coffee. The recurring story and gameplay element of radio and number stations allows for the integration of many real number station recordings, transferring the mysterious and ominous nature of them to Signalis. I spent a good amount of time just scanning through the radio and listening to eerie synthesized voices reading numbers. There is no shortage of music in this game. 2 musicians contributed to the soundtrack in 1000 Eyes and Cicada Sirens. Though representing 2 different tones and styles, I don't think any of the music clashes with each other. It all kind of fits snugly into place while changing shape to adhere to whatever situation you're in. If you're just wandering around hallways solving puzzles, we get these wonderfully creepy and haunted sounding beds of ambience. If you're in combat or fleeing from approaching combat, we get some real noisy industrial percussion, just like rusted scraps of metal slapping against each other over mechanical whirring. It's really great. I could draw a parallel to Akira Yamaoka's work on Silent Hill, and it does kind of sound like that was the instruction, but it does have a flavor of its own. It's a similar kind of sound, but with a robotic, futuristic slant to it. Many of the cutscenes feature these somber and powerful piano pieces that really highlight the emotional core this game has. The desperate search for a loved one that is driving everything, really. And these do a lot of heavy lifting in the shaping of the game's atmosphere. It's the third heat. You gotta have that balance of washing machines fucking and the world's most depressing piano. That's the recipe. Signalis was an incredible surprise to me, effortlessly reassuring me that I can still recapture and experience anew the joy of the survival horror games I was enamored with as a young gamer, when there was still hope that I'd amount to something. Oh, if little me could see me now, in my 30s and desperately trying to huff the fumes of late 90s air as the world barrels towards a future that has no place for me. This game requires me to tap into those same neural pathways I haven't used in decades. When I say effortless, I don't mean to suggest it's not exerting effort, because it certainly is. It's just so solid that you wouldn't guess this was a couple devs grinding away for years. Also, not to suggest that it's merely a funhouse mirror reflection of something that already existed. It is very much its own idea, with more to display than its appreciation for an older style of game. It's a good game. It was such a pleasant experience that it canceled my Dark Arc. You know how hard it is to stop one of those when you're right in the thick of it? I mean, sometimes I still experience residual
Get out of my head!
but you know, I'm only human. I think the biggest surprise was what kind of story Signalis tells. And maybe it's a sign of my own growing cynicism that I was so faithless when going into it, but it wound up being exactly the kind of story that I'm drawn to. Any answer Signalis gives you about its plot is accompanied by another contradictory answer. If you're wondering what A means, it will give you B, and also C, maybe. This is a big part of why I love the first Silent Hill game, and why I think its narrative is so important. Obviously, over time, we've picked it clean and headcanoned much of our own bullshit into it, but the way it presents a story that you could potentially get wildly different reads out of based on playstyle is key. Creating plenty of moments that are emotionally powerful, that can resonate with you, but you still can't say you understood every bit of it, and that is reflected fantastically in Signalis, more so than several games with Silent Hill on the box. You don't get the answers to everything you want. Why is it that even the task manager in Windows 11 can crash? I'll never know. Does that bother me? Yes. But am I angry about it? Yeah. There is a pure and simplistic beauty to its gameplay loop, a damn near perfect allotment of reward and oppression. It knows when to throw you a treat and when to bonk you on the snout with a rolled up newspaper. Lets you fight back, protect yourself, but never lets you feel like you're not outnumbered and underpowered. Puzzles can be hardwired to the mechanics of the game's setting, but also indulge in the bizarre over-design of Resident Evil. The kind of puzzles that make you wonder how it wouldn't frustrate the person who needs regular access to a door locked by 6 hexagonal keys hidden in 6 different locations. But even then, it doesn't pull you out of it. If anything, it makes more sense given how alien so much of the world of Signalis is. I don't know, man, maybe this is just how doors work here. Maybe everyone just uses their radio modules to play a certain frequency that opens their trinket box where they keep their key. People are real patient in this world. I go to log into an account and I don't remember the password and it doesn't remember me, and I'm just like, fuck it, I guess I'll just never come here again. Do I really need to look at my bank? Yes. I do. I lost a debit card and I need to freeze it. It's been a real problem. I guess that's just where the video ends, huh? Fuck it. Whatever, dude. Thank you for watching it. If you liked the video, try literally liking it. Or, you know, whatever you want to do. There's a Patreon, there's a Discord, there's a Twitter. For now. And an extra special thanks to Ailing Uncle, 2Password for Kids, Agendine, Alex, Raymond, Alexander Smith, Annabelle Fuchs, Andre Perkins, Aparts 89, Bayard Brown, Benjamin Sid Perez, Big Abuela Energy, Breeze McKenzie, Close Quarter Wombat, D-Sky, Daphne Pittendry, Dark Raptor 86, Deluminati, Dr. Beard, Das Days, Edgy, Edward Avila, Fart Mother, Game Master, Gaming with Clarptarp, Gamma, High Food Court, Jack the Dave, Jack Steele, Jay Alameen, Joseph Zanoni, Carrot, Kamikaze Melon, Lore, Marcus Chaney, Michael Schmidt, Morgan Harper, Neckout the Brave, Octo, Oisto, Philip Woolley, Rahul Kirthi, Richard Gillespie, Roland, Salvatore Tosti, Shadowman 13, Snapplefish, Stuka Bliat, This Deal is Getting Better All the Time, Turts, Where Am I? Help, Your Problems Make My Dick Soft, Zach Bishop, Crash Punk, Daniel Streb, Avanerve, Giraffa, Gunmancer, Karen Rosenow, Catherine Graven, Swood Operator, T-Dog 8083, 410,757,864,530 gay cops, A Hanging Chad, Albert Hunley, Bang Flang, Binary Vision, Rosoof Jones, Cantankerous, Chimichanga Jones, Dubs, Enter Stage Left and Fuck My Ass Grim Daddy, Eric Yaudon, Fix My Brain, Ishanji, Jeremy Lott, J-Man DX, JP, Mad Monty 98, Make It Raynor, Morgan D. Trias, Ophelia Fishwife, P. Dizzle, Persian Air. Please stop treating player agency as a negative. Leaning left-right manually isn't a fucking cover system, it's basic movement. Robert Brandon, Rowdy Roddy Peeper, Samuel Ward, Simon Daniel, Technica, Tenbeat, That Uninformed Guy, The Angry Pebble, Alexander Olbrich, Ali G, All the Nope, Andrew Light, Andy Krieger, Astro Shepherd, Atari Steed, Auspicious Whiskers, Beef, Bannon Cara Dowling, Benjamin Payne, Benji Blakeway, Bindle, Bishy93, Biddles 999999, Bivdub, Brendan McFadden, Brett Weaver, Brody Gibson, Carl Hanna, Colby, Contrefair, Cult of Lita, Daniel Chernovsky, David Fromke, David Harpstrite, David's Baby Bilkeys, Dazed Clockwork, Dongs.exe, Eto, Yulino7, General Klazara, Ghoul Baby Bond, Goth Hunter Cass, Haley Bobella. Hey, would you blow me? I circumvented your trap. Hitoshi-san, INTJ loves her INTP. Irish wristwatch, Irish wristwatch, Irish wristwatch. Jake Desi, Jake Raynor, Jerry, Jimmy Changa, June Choi, Jordan Balzano, Joshua David, J Raptor, Captain Ketchup, Lori Kubri, Leland Miliokis, Leopold Gloom, Lightly Salted Nuts, M, Mandalore Gaming, Marauding Fraud, Marcy Bones, Max Cohen, MCR, Micah J Best, Miles Phillips, More Sharks, Mr. Alpacleton, Mr. Ducky Quack, Mystical Lint, Name Requires DLC, Nick Hill, Nick Timmons, Noel M, Nuclear Sun, Noel Rom, Oliver Marshall, Opichi Kostra, Paul Fierce, Replicant, Ruibi Somem, Samejima, Rat Roundup's #1 fan. Hey, you know what? It's been rough these last 2 videos, I admit. Gonna try to get some rats in there soon. Scarlet, Scofflaw D, Shadanon, Skylar J. Leal, Sawbackaducka, Startide, Sinulia, Team R, the Ratmonger of Castle Jork. Through the darkness of future past, the magician longs to see one chance out between 2 worlds. Putty, walk with me. Vilmar Valthorson, Vincent Cronin, Zanga PF, and Stianek Benez. Thank you very much for being a patron. Grim, your sleepy bird voice recently saved my life. Thanks for that. Please take my money, and next time my name will be different. I look forward to seeing what your next name will be, and you're welcome for however I did that with silly videos. Oh, I should say thank you to the developers behind Signalis for sending me a key for their game, and for making it a good game. Because if it wasn't good, I'm just kidding. Really appreciate it. I felt very cool. I felt very special. Anywho, thank you for supporting this channel and me and my ability to buy various orange-flavored drinks. And thank you to orange-flavored drinks for also supporting this channel. I gotta get back to work on something else. The content machine never stops. Stay goth, stay gaming. Thanks one more time. I'll have more things soon. Videos, music, content. When I want to sell some of those shiny stickers from the opening. Okay, bye. I'll see you later. Okay, bye. I love you. Bye.